Everybody comes to Las Vegas knowing what they're looking for. The question is, even if they find it, would they actually be satisfied? There's a moment like this in the life of Jesus. It's an incredibly rare conversation. It's the single longest conversation recorded between Jesus and anyone else in the entirety of the Bible. It's not only rare because of that, it's rare because of who it takes place with. Let me set it up though first. Jesus is traveling from one place to another, and on his way, he stops in a city that normally a Jewish man would not stop in. It's a city that's lived in, occupied by a group of people called the Samaritans. And in the first century, and honestly beyond the first century, the Jews and the Samaritans, they didn't get along. There was a lot of religious tension, there was a lot of racial tension, there was just tension all the way around. When they saw each other in public, it was not a good thing. But Jesus makes a very on-purpose decision as he's traveling to go through the city. There were options to go around the city, to avoid the Samaritans altogether, but he went right to the heart of it. And Jesus is about a half a mile outside of the Samaritan city, and there's a well, and he comes to it and he stops for a moment. And while he's sitting there, this woman from the village nearby, this Samaritan woman, she has to come and get water. It's middle of the day, the sun is high in the sky, and she's coming in the heat of the day to get water from this well. And as she approaches, undoubtedly she sees Jesus. And there's this awkward moment of, are we going to speak? Are we going to pretend that we don't exist? And Jesus takes the initiative and says, will you get me a drink? Now, this blows the woman away. She's shocked, like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, is this guy talking to me? And in fact, the Bible tells us, it says this in John 4:9, the Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? Complete shock is an understatement. She's already sized Jesus up. I don't know if it's because of the way he looked, the complexion of his skin, the way he talked. She knew he was a Jew. And obviously she knew exactly who she was, which was a Samaritan woman. The two of these people should not be having a conversation with one another. Number one, Jews didn't talk to Samaritans, that's fine. Number two, Jews would not eat or drink anything a Samaritan handed them. And the third thing is, just in Jewish culture altogether, men didn't have conversations with women in public. And so her response, she's like, I don't think you understand what's happening here. And Jesus, though, looks at her and is like, let me be honest with you. If you actually knew who I was, you would have asked me for a drink of water. I know you think you know me, but if you actually knew me, you'd ask me for a drink of water. And I would have given you living water. Jesus is trying to let her know, I'm probably not who you think I am. There might be something more to me than meets the eye. The truth is, Jesus is trying to tell her, I know you think you know what you're looking for, but I don't actually know if you do know what you're really looking for. The woman has a smart response though. When Jesus says, hey, you would have asked me, I would have given you living water. And she says, look, dude, I don't know if you know how a well works. Maybe it's because you're a man and you don't go to the well that often to get water. You got to have something to put in the well to get the water out. So it's nice that you think that you could give me this living water, but the well is too deep here. You can't just reach in with your hands, what she's saying. You can't just reach in with your hand and pull up some water. You got nothing to get it with. How are you going to have access to any kind of water, whether you want to call it living or not? You know, Jesus has a decision to make. Does he really get into it with her? Does he really tell her about it, or does she just like let Samaritans play Samaritan games? Well, he decides, I'm here, I'm all in. He tells her, no, this living water, the thing is, it's not coming from this well. The living water I've got, once you drink of it, you'll never be thirsty again. The people that drink out of this well, that's drawing water with their buckets and their ropes, yeah, they're just gonna come back over and over and over again. But I got something different than that. all of a sudden the woman starts processing and she's like, hold on, you're saying you have access to a kind of water that if I were to drink it, I'd never be thirsty again? Her mind's racing. She's like, so I wouldn't have to come to this well in the middle of the day anymore? She's like, I like that. Now, we don't know why she's there in the middle of the day. Typically in the first century, getting water from a well was a very social moment. And all of a sudden, she's there by herself in the middle of the day. This would have typically taken place early in the morning as the day got started. Now, maybe she ran out, or maybe she's feeling some tension with the other ladies, like, I'm gonna go when they're not there. We don't know. All we do know is that she's interested in this water, that once you drink it, you never have to come to the well again. So she says she's in. She's like, I want some of that. So Jesus just responds to her in John 4:16. He says, okay, go call your husband, come back. Now, this is where she has a choice to make. Does she tell him the truth? Does she make it up? She's honest with him. She's like, well, actually, I have no husband. And this is where Jesus steps right into her personal life. He looks at her and says, I know. I know. In fact, you've had 5 husbands. And the guy that you're with now, he's not your husband. Now, what I don't know, what we don't know, is why she's had 5 husbands. Was she widowed 5 times? Did she get divorced? Was it a mixture of both? All we do know is that anyone who walks through 5 marriages, there's a lot of hurt there. There are some pretty large burdens that she's been carrying around, these boulders that undoubtedly have been weighing her down. So she has a decision to make. What do I do with a guy who just out of nowhere starts telling all of my personal business right here at the watering hole for our city? She does what you and I would probably do. She changes the subject. And in fact, she goes to one of the topics that you're not supposed to talk about in public, right? Religion. And she starts bringing up some things that sit in tension between the Jews and the Samaritans. And she starts going back, this is how we worship, this is what you think. And so she's taking something that's, hey, you just got really personal with me. I don't know if I want to talk about that. Let's go back to not just, this isn't about me, this is about your people and my people. And she's going back and forth, and eventually Jesus stops her and is like, yeah, look, I'm here to tell you that God isn't actually interested in all of those things you're talking about. What God is really after isn't an argument about which mountain is holier, isn't an argument about the religious traditions between the Jews and the Samaritans. God is actually about something much more intimate in terms of a personal relationship with us and the way that we see Him and understand Him. You know, the lady finally gets to a place where she's like, okay, look, it feels like a closing statement almost, where she's trying to wrap this up. And she's just like, you know what? At some point, the Messiah will come and He'll explain all these things. It's almost like she's just saying, hey, all right, I'm done. I'm done. You're right. That's fine. At some point, the Messiah is going to show up. He's going to clear this up. It feels like she's saying, it's been nice talking to you. At some point in the future, we'll figure it out. We're going to agree to disagree. But Jesus stops her and says, that guy she just talked about, that Messiah, that's me. I'm the guy you've been looking for. From there, she leaves her water jar and she runs back into the city. And she goes and she begins to tell everyone. But here's the interesting thing. This is what she says when she gets to the people of the city. She says, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Listen to what I just said. She goes into the town and she tells them, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. That's wild to me. That's an enormous risk. What if the people come out from the town and they come to see Jesus and He begins to tell all of them all the things that she's ever done? It's wild. This is the most important part of the story. Why would she be so excited to introduce her city, her community, to a man who could tell her everything she's ever done? And this isn't like a trophy wall of these are the list of her accomplishments. No, remember what Jesus was saying? I know about your husband issue. I know about the guy you're with now that's not your husband. She's saying, hey, he's told me all my secrets. He knows all of them, and I want y'all to know him. Why would she do that? John 4:39 gives us this incredible description of what happens after she shares this truth with her city. It says, many of the Samaritans from the town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. And this is what it says, quote, he told me everything I ever did. How would you respond to a conversation with Jesus where he told you everything you ever did? Are you thinking that you would hear that and say, I can't wait to share you with all of my friends? I can't wait to introduce all of my friends to you? That's what her response was. Maybe there's something there that we're missing that we can learn, that we can pick up on. Or maybe you hear this and you're like, no, my anxiety level is already rising. My heart rate is up, right? I'm a little nervous. I don't know if I could have a conversation with Jesus about all the things I've ever done. Well, I tell you, from my personal experience, and the more I've gotten to know Jesus by studying his life story, I think the conversation might actually go a bit better than you think. I think there's something too that we can learn from the reaction of the woman that gives us some insight into the character and the desires of Jesus when he has this type of conversation with someone. I think that might be what we're looking for in 2025. What do you think?